Unreal. I love it. Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this Thursday afternoon, I am delighted to be joined by John Paul Mason. We're going to be talking Celtic. We might even touch on Panathinaikos and also Jaws. I know it's your favourite movie of all time, JP, but there's a bit of a Jaws overdose here on the screen. You've got a T-shirt. Is that a lunchbox up there? Remember the old lunchboxes from back in the day? Is it even a VHS? I'm not quite sure.
No, that's a limited edition bottle of gin.
That's tremendous. Is there a? Oh, so it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, mate, that is class. Listen, this is a deviation that I've been waiting for all week. Is there a specific date? Is it an anniversary of Jaws being made or something?
50th anniversary. Wow. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow is incredible.
The opening weekend of Jaws 50 years ago, and I think there's some sort of celebrations taking part in Martha's Vineyard where it was filmed, and if I was flush with cash, I wouldn't have been on this stream with you right now. I would have been there, visiting all the different places. It's something that I will do at some point in my life. There's no doubt about it. I have to go and see where the greatest film of all time was made, but unfortunately not this weekend. They do a screening as well in Texas, in Austin, where you sit in a rubber raft on water and watch it on a screen.
Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it, mate. JP has announced already that the greatest movie of all time is Jaws. Let us know in the comment section. There you go. That'll get you going in the comments where we talk Celtic. I'll tell you at the end of the show what my favourite movie is. I might have done this before. Brown Warrior, you're straight in. You're going to need a bigger bottle, JP. Never mind a bigger boat. Absolutely. We've also got Jay Conley, Jay Larkin coming through, James Devine, Barry Quinn, Paddy Lavery. Great to see you all, Jungle Lion, and we'll get as many of your comments up as we possibly can. First thing I'm going to do though, we'll get onto that Panathinaikos top in a second. Like most of us, a wee email dropped in at my inbox today. Yes, it was Celtic punting more Adidas gear. Yes, I opened it up as I do. However, it wasn't the Adidas merch that I was interested in. It was the images of Jota on the grass. Now, obviously, we all become internet sleuths in moments like this. So I'm asking my mate, is that an old picture because the sun is shining? And he pointed out, actually, on a photo shoot, that some of the grass, you know how the grass has been relaid and it's like, it looks a wee bit yellow in the corners. He pointed that out. So that looks as though it's a recent image, JP. So from the merchandise email, that is what I'm taking from it. Jota might be back on the grass. Did you notice that?
It did pique my interest that it was Jota that was in the pictures, and I was like, well, hold on a minute. I mean that there's no way that would have been filmed pre or the shots would have been taken pre his injury. So I mean, I'm not going to get ahead of myself and start thinking he's going to be back much sooner than he was meant to. Everybody sort of talks about the time frame being any time between November and January. So if we were to get him back at the earlier part of that time frame, then it'd be great for him. It'd be great for us, obviously, selfishly, but it'd be great for him as well, because I just feel for the guy that he's had such a rough time of it. Yes, there will be many people that will just say, look at his bank balance. I'm sure he's now had a rough time of it looking at that, and that's all fair and well, but he's not able to do his job, and that must be frustrating. And he's come back to us and had that kind of amazing moment at Fir Park when he scores, and probably was looking forward to the new format of the Champions League, playing in that for the first time. Well, again, if we get there, we have our own hurdles to get to that. But I really hope for his sake that he gets back playing again, and then obviously secondly for us, so that we get to see him play, because he's class.
There's a massive focus for me this pre-season, JP, and I guess it's like this with every pre-season, where you think there's a group of players that need the pre-season under their belts. You want to see them in full flow, having had that time, even if it's time away, playing the pre-season games in Como, the warm training camp, all that kind of thing. And I had Jota in that kind of category of player. I thought, after everything that he's come through in his career, and people always point to the bank balance, I think Jota is a living example of money not creating happiness. He's chased that money his career's been completely derailed as a result of that. Celtic were happy to take the £25 million. We were part of that process, but I really wanted to see him with a pre-season at Celtic again under his belt. And I guess the other guys that I'm going to put into that category are Adam Ida, Austin Trusty, and of course Arnie Engels, because it is so important, JP. We can't underestimate the benefit of having that process going through the summer with the training, but also the trips away. Time and time again, I've heard stories about the pre-season trip that Celtic went on the season we conquered Europe. We went to America, and there's that great footage on the old Celtic story, which was released years ago, and it's on my shelf somewhere behind me. And it's the guys, even just round about the pool, the camaraderie, the morale, the bonding of the team. It's so important. And I think that's the saddest part about the injury is the fact Jota's not going to get that, is he?
No, absolutely. The thing you don't think about is that the time that they have in the summer together once they come back is pretty much uninterrupted by pressurized games. So it's always that chat when you get deep into the season and everyone's sort of talking about how there's just no time on the training field. We've got no time to train. It's just basically game, sort of a relaxation day, maybe a light training session, and then another game. So there's not really that kind of time to work on what do we do in this situation? What do we do in this situation? Like just all these kind of eventualities. And that's the best time in a relaxed environment. That's the best time to work on them, you would have thought. And when there's not key players there as part of all that, then they're missing out on, obviously they'll be fed back the information, but you can't replicate actual, physical training and being there while it's happening. So you never want anybody to miss pre-season, and especially not through an injury. There's a different story when it's a protracted transfer like last summer, where you've got the whole of the summer pretty much without Adam Ida, and he's not there for the American trip, which I think was beneficial to all. I mean, Brendan Rodgers has referenced that quite a few times, isn't he? That those games against Man City and Chelsea and Adam Ida wasn't a part of that. And whatever we do this summer, the Como thing in Italy, Jota's not going to be a part of that. I mean, hopefully he'll be able to be there, but he'll not actually be playing, I guess.
It's so important. I think back to those games. We were doing an event actually during one of them. I think it might have been a Chelsea game. We were in Grangemouth doing an event with Joe Ledley and Charlie Mulgrew that night. But you look at the performance of some of the guys during the games and you're thinking, oh, Palma looks good. And very quickly realise that wasn't the case. But the pre-season, it's absolutely key for the benefit of the team, the individuals, the morale. Robert, I'm bringing this one up just now. Wonder if someone can help. Looking for the 13th of November 65 game against St Johnstone, even just a picture doing a 60th birthday present. Well, what you should do, Robert, get yourself onto the Celtic Wiki, because I've just had a look on there and they do have a few images. They tend to try and put images from as many games as possible, even if it's just from old newspaper reports. So look, there's a couple on there at the moment.
Going to say, Matthew Marr, Hail History, he'll probably have the programme. He's got, there you go, quite a bit.
Yeah, he may well do. He's like a modern day historian, isn't he, Matthew? So there you go. The game is St Johnstone 1, Celtic 4. There's a couple of pictures in there. That's obviously a fair challenge against Bobby Lennox in the box by the goalie. VAR wouldn't have intervened there. And that looks as though it's probably Joe McBride scoring a goal.
We've got a Celtic News Now page up on the screen, not what you're looking at. I don't know what. Hi.
Oh, there we go. So we do. Aye. It just shows you where I check my information. But I will bring that up in just a moment. And I'll show you the pictures as well. This is technology. This is what can happen. Never work with animals, kids, or live telly, basically. And that's what's happened here. So we'll stop sharing that just now and I'll show you the pictures. But yeah, the Celtic Wiki, JP, what an unbelievable resource that is, because it's one of the things I think I've got at this time. Yes, I do. There we go. Is that better? So there's the first one, the VAR one, and there's the second one, Joe McBride. What a goal scorer he was, scoring against St Johnstone. That would have been at Muirton Park rather than McDermott Park, wouldn't it? Muirton Park, 1965. So a great resource. Get yourself on there if you're looking for images, information, unbelievable work, all done by volunteers. So absolutely no money involved. It's just an incredible resource. And I've got to say, every single time I've written a book, I have gone on there to verify all my information time and time again. So massive thanks to every single person that's involved in maintaining it, JP. We were talking about JT. We were talking about Jota on the wing. We haven't really seen him in full flow yet. We just got flashes of that at the end of the last season before he got injured. But one name that keeps popping up is Michel-Ange Balikwisha. And again, in the news again today, it looks as though we are serious about bringing him to the football club. And you know, we might get one of the old-fashioned pictures. JP, remember, we used to just announce everybody in one image, and it was just a big row of them. I used to love that, but we don't do it anymore because we need to squeeze the social traction, don't we? We need to do it individually. Every player gets their moment.
Well, I suppose that's the way it is nowadays, isn't it? That's why you don't get that kind of big fanfare day where the press are all camped out and ready to take pictures of like 3 or 4 players. It's just, I mean, I don't mind it. It is cool. It makes quite an impact if you have that moment where there's. And to be fair, there is an image of. Is it Carter Vickers? There's 3. I remember seeing pictures of 3 signings. There's definitely one of Maeda when he signed, and there's 3 of them all up at Lennoxtown, all holding the jerseys, like when they signed. So even if they have had like individual announcements, they sometimes still do that if it's been on the same day, or if they've all arrived for training on the same day or something like that. They'll maybe take a first picture with them. It was a January transfer window one as well, which obviously Maeda would have been in. Because who else did we get that window? Did we get Maeda, Hatate,
Ideguchi, and then we also got O'Reilly later on in the window, didn't we?
Later on, yeah. Aye. So
I'm going to share an image. This is probably the reason why I'm so fond of this type of images, because both obviously you and I, you know, the love affair started not between us two, but between us and Celtic around about the same time. And it's an image like this that I'm talking about, JP, right? So you've got the old school Tommy Burns and Roy Aitken in there, and then you've got the new signings, Billy Stark, Chris Morris and Andy Walker. And of course, Mick McCarthy, Davy Hayes' final signing, never kicked the ball for Mick McCarthy. And he's obviously a centenary signing, but there's some great pictures of him in the 86-87 jersey. Prior to this season kicking off. That's the image I'm talking about. How good does that, how wholesome does that look? And look at the centenary tops with the long sleeves, JP.
The best, the absolute best. Immortal images of that top. But Roy Aitken probably about 25 there or something.
I know, Mick McCarthy in his late 20s and the grey starting to pop out there. And look at the multicoloured seats in the main stand. I mean, have they even been replaced? That's about the only thing that has been replaced.
I was in the main stand on Sunday, and I was there for the Celtic Park tour with my mate and his wee boy and his granddad, and it was brilliant. You know, really, it was the first time I'd done the tour for 25 years. And
is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's one of those ones. It's like once you've done it, like why would you keep going back? You know, but like so I just hadn't been there since my 21st birthday. I went with my mate Graham Snedden, and we met. Somebody went. I think Sned said to the tour guide that it was my birthday, which is also Tom Boyd's birthday. So they went in and got Tom Boyd, and he came out and he was like, "I heard someone's got a birthday today," and I was like, "I know, so have you?" And like, I knew that, and obviously we were chatting about the fact that Roy Aitken's birthday is the same as mine and his, as is Billy Connolly's. So we were chatting about that, and then he went and got some of the other players over and met Mialby, Tommy Johnson, I think Agat, Petrov. We met Petrov just came out to us when we were standing in the trackside, and came over and said all right, and I got a quick chat with Stilly and Petrov. But yeah, we were there on Sunday. We didn't obviously see any players on Sunday because there was nobody there. But the guide, Ken, brilliant, really knowledgeable.
Is it Ken Ross? Big shout out to Ken Ross, big tall guy. Yep.
He's quite tall, yeah. Sort of greyish hair, sort of suit jacket with all the badges and that.
That's Ken.
Yeah.
If you're tuning in, Ken, big shout out to you. You're getting an endorsement here from JP for your ability up at the
well,
tour.
Do you know what he said? He said it was part of his spiel when we were in the trophy room. He said since 2000 we've won 19 league titles, and I was just like, just thought back to like, imagine somebody came up to me when I was on that tour in November 24th, 2000. Bearing in mind we'd just been beaten 5-1 off Rangers at Ibrox.
Yeah.
And we were, 3-4 months into the Martin O'Neill reign.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody came up to me and said, the next time you're on this tour will be June 15th, 2025. And by that point, you'll be 42 trophies better off since 2000. Because he rhymed that out straight away. I went up to him towards the end and I said, last time I was on the tour was 25 years ago, 2000. And he went, we'll be 42 to the good with 19 league titles since then. And I was just like, how mad is that, saying that out loud?
It's incredible, JP. It's absolutely incredible. And in that time as well, we have seen the demise of Rangers going into liquidation. We have seen the Stone Roses and Oasis reforming. It's been a great time. We're just waiting for the Smiths now. I just noticed this morning Johnny Marr's on the overlap. Going to have to check that out as well. The Smiths reformation. Can't see that one happening right enough. But I love the old school. I love the old school images like that. The other ones I remember, of course, are Andy Payton, Rudy Vata, and Stuart Slater. Just at the tunnel. I remember them all coming out just at the tunnel. And John Hartson, Steve Guppy, and Momo Silla. They all got photographed together as well. Yeah, they're going to draw it out all summer. Of course they are. But the name that's obviously now kind of being focused on is Balikwisha. We spoke yesterday about Nygren. Looks as though that's a done deal. Just talking about personal terms. Jota, still injured, even though he can kick a ball about the park to model the new kit. It looks as though Balikwisha's a left winger. They're talking £5 million, Royal Antwerp. If that happens, JP, are we finally realising that Maeda is a centre forward and we're more or less saying, right, when Jota's back, we've got two left wingers in the door. Maeda just should concentrate on playing centre forward, because when I look at the squad at the moment, he is undoubtedly our number one centre forward. I mean, please disagree in the comments. It's not a slight against Adam Maeda. I'm a big fan of Maeda, but Maeda is the best centre forward at the football club by a distance.
Well, if that is the case and he has been considered that, then it's a bit of a kind of volte face from Brendan Rodgers from what he was saying in January, where he was like, I could play Maeda through the middle, but I'd rather not. I'd rather keep him where he is. So has his form since the turn of the year changed his mind to the point that he's now looking at transfers differently? Because if you think about it, they would have been planning. Sure, well, you'd like to think you would like to think that there was plans being made for who and what position that we would be going for come the window being open, but it doesn't. That could have changed. They might have completely ripped up several ideas, but we know that Balikwisha has been in the sort of frame and in the conversation for at least a year.
Yeah.
Because he's been linked for a while, and it's kind of strange that these guys are linked. Like, these guys are constantly linked, so there must be something in these. That it's not just journalists plucking names out of nowhere, because there's so many footballers that there's no way you would run with a story on a specific player unless there was some sort of level of interest that had been confirmed by the club. So I did something that I said to myself I wouldn't do anymore, and I have done it now for two players. So it's becoming too much of a kind of temptation. But I watched the YouTube video of Benjamin Nygren, if that is how you pronounce his name. Apologies to any Swedish speakers who are wincing at the fact that we're butchering his name. I genuinely, I've not looked it up. I should have looked it up.
Well, the thing is, JP, it happens, right? But as long as we correct ourselves early doors, because sometimes you just double down on that. Kev Graham continually called Elyounoussi for the entirety of his 2 loan spells. But I'm going to go with Quinny. Quinny calls him Ben Nygren. It just rolls off the tongue. So I'm going to go with that until I'm corrected.
Well, regardless of how you pronounce his name, I watched the video of some of his play, and again, I know that it always makes someone look good. They're not going to put any of his poor shows on that reel, but what I saw of him, I was very impressed with. Looks a really good player, and I know that people will say, well, what standard was it? I mean, it's the Swedish league. In fact, it's not. Is it the Swedish league that he's been playing in? Danish. Aye, sorry. And people will say those leagues are not top drawer, but I just was focusing on what I could see him doing, and you could say the same thing about the Scottish league. I mean, I know that ultimately we want a player to come here and turn it on and at the top level in Europe and everything else. But as I've said many times, the majority of the games we play are in Scotland. So that's where you want your players to be at the top of their game and be someone that if it's 0-0 at Easter Road, there's someone there that can, I mean, he's got a hell of a ping of a pass. I watched him make this pass with his left foot where he kind of hits it with the outside of his foot, and it's just like precision. And you can just hit instead of putting a curve on it, he's hitting it with the outside of his foot to like the back post for folk at the back post. So that in particular looked impressive, as did his close control. And generally, if we're going after a player in that mould, the hit rate of players like that are starting to become more and more regularly to the good, rather than another one in the scrap heap or another one that goes out on loan after 6 months. But I think it could probably and maybe should spell the end for Yang and Palma to be in any way considered Celtic players next season.
Yeah, and Tilio, I know that obviously his loan deal, I'll keep him there for a wee while longer, but I do look at this kind of move and I think to myself, it's time to clear the decks. We had a conversation yesterday in and around the impact, JP, of that first transfer window after Brendan Rodgers came in, and the fact that we're still paying for the sins of that window now. And it is time just to clear the decks of people like the 2 wingers you've mentioned, add Tilio onto that, because they've not made the impact. After 2 years, they've not made the impact that you would expect. You look at Benji Nygren, and I was thinking to myself, why so cheap? But it would appear that obviously his contract's ran into the last 6 months. Therefore, he is leaving for what looks like a snip at 1.7 million, by the way. 3 caps for Sweden, 2 goals. So his international career's up and running. He can play on both wings or as a number 10. A lot of people reckon he'll be that creative force in the middle of the park. And he's only 23. I was having to look at his career as well, the teams that he's played with. And he teamed up with a certain Ibu Kouassi when at Genk. Remember him? Ibu Kouassi. Wow. £2.5 million. Brought him in. The new Scott Brown. I remember that. Yes. What an interesting character. What an interesting few signings we had around about that time. And he was in there when you look at the minutes that he played or didn't play. And he was briefly in the same side as Sidney van Hooijdonk when he went on loan to Heerenveen as well. So I was having a wee look at him this morning, like yourself, looking at his clips and stuff like that as well. And you think to yourself, what's not to like? I mean, personal terms are probably being agreed as we speak. And it's the adaptability as well. The fact that you can play in a couple of wings, a couple of different positions, that I think is great. So yes, I'm looking forward to seeing that welcome image. Do we use the scarves? Not so much these days, is it? It's just the new Adidas merch. We didn't see the scarves above the head and all that kind of stuff as often as we used to, JP.
I'm just thinking of what our success rate with Swedish players is reasonably good. Like
Let's run through them from memory. Let's think about
Mastarovic, Mjällby, Larsson, as if you need to even mention him. Lustig.
Lustig, yeah.
Ljungberg. Maybe not. Sorry,
Ljungberg.
Okay, Ljungberg, but I mean that he's a specific category of player. He's one of the kind of, I don't know, the guys past the age of 30 where we just take a punt, probably in the same vein as like Juninho or Dion Dublin or whoever else. But he had Magnus Hedman as well.
Oh yeah.
I didn't mind Magnus Hedman, but I mean I'll never forgive him for that Bayern Munich away shipping that goal. That was criminal. Thinking who else? Other Swedish players?
That's a good list. I think you've got
Mo Bangura Swedish.
Well, they came from a Swedish club, but I'm going to check that because I
remember
remember
Larsson seal of approval, didn't he? So
he did, and he's one of the guys that always comes up in conversation when you speak to one of his ex-teammates, where they didn't actually think he was a footballer when they saw him at training. Sierra Leone, he had 18 caps and scored 2 goals, but yes, we did bring him in. Remember, we loaded them out to Elfsborg, and they ended up playing against us in Europe. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And
I can't think of any. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any other Swedish players, but there probably is one or two. But from those ones that we've just listed off, that's a pretty decent hit rate in terms of contribution and legacy. I know people are a bit mixed on Mastarovic. But he was all right.
Came in, done a job, no frills kind of player, I thought, JP to be. I remember a game against St Mirren where he's gone in for a header and he's ended up with one of the unbelievable bumps on his head that was out to here. St Mirren have actually just got John Park in the door as head of scouting and player development. So I think that's a good move for them as well. We're always looking at all these wee changes that other Scottish clubs are making, JP, to improve their own network. And obviously the big conversation again during this window is, we know that Tisdale was doing some consultancy work for Celtic. We thought that he had been employed by the club in October. He was telling us, or he told the fans forum rather, that he didn't come in until the January. So this really is his first window proper. And I think it's one of the ones where we're looking at the players coming in and we're thinking, right, how are we going to do this differently? The reason yesterday that I spoke about that first window wasn't to just be negative for the sake of it. It was to say that is where we were 2 summers ago. We were brought in all these players, none of whom the guys listed yesterday, none of them worked. None of them made a positive impact on the football team. People might say, Palmer did, but then he fell off the edge of a cliff after that's purple patch. So we had to make a change at that point, JP, didn't we? And we added up the money that was spent on Nawrocki, Palmer and all those guys that came in. And it was the guts of 20 million quid. And the discussion that I think is an important one, would you rather do that or would you rather spend 20 million on Engels and Ida? Because all season I've heard the arguments about them being a waste of money or overpriced or whatever. And I just think to myself, well, which is it? Because there has to be a balance here. I'd much rather Ida and Engels than that list of 8 players who haven't made the grade.
Totally. Well, and then you're looking at giving opportunities to youth players, rather than spending that money, because all they've done really is just put a roadblock up or a couple of roadblocks up for, I don't know, Dane Murray playing at centre half instead of Lagerbielke or Nawrocki, and then you've got wingers getting blocked by Palma and Yang, who are not going to be here long term, but you're trying to develop wingers. I mean, it'd be interesting to have not an argument, but interesting to have a conversation with someone in the recruitment team at Celtic about that. Be like, well, these signings clearly haven't worked out, and we've stopped, and that's a year, isn't it? It's a year. It was summer 24. No, it wasn't summer 24. It was
two summers back. Yeah,
23. So that's 2 years of development with youth players that have been I don't know, paused or
ended, or even ended. Yeah.
because of these signings. And you don't argue with signings when they work out, but when a glut of signings like that don't work out, you then start pointing to, well, this could have happened if we hadn't signed him. This could have happened if we hadn't signed him. Would there have been a clearer pathway for other players? So it's really frustrating when you add it up and you're getting it to 20 million. Just like I know that we're a rich and rich health and financial health and everything else, but we still can't be affording to just write off £20 million of transfer. And obviously credit to the club if they do manage to get money back for Lagerbielke if he goes to somewhere in Holland, and Palma's obviously a bit up in the air still, but you would think that we would get some sort of. He's not going to go for nothing. He's not that bad that he's going to go for nothing. But yeah, it's just, and the Nawrocki thing still is bewildering. And then there was reports coming out saying that he's part of our plans. Did you see that?
I seen that on the back of the fact that the loan, isn't with a view to getting him out the building. It's with a view to bringing him back in. So that is up in the air. I think the interesting part of that is you sign the players that we speak about, JP, but obviously the wages are a lot more combined than the wages of Adam Ida and Arnie Engels. And also, I always hear people saying, it's not an exact science. No team in the world gets it right every time. I absolutely get that. I totally agree with it. But see, with the advancement of data, we should be better at it, JP. I mean, it shouldn't be a case of, here's a player that we've brought in and we've spent £3 million on him, but he doesn't play our style or he's not fast enough. We should know that before we sign the player.
Yeah.
So we need to get to a point, I think, as a football club where we never put ourselves in that situation again, when it's £20 million on 8 players down the drain. That's what it is. I mean, we've done brilliant business. We're getting 25 million in for Jota. The same window, we brought in 4.5 for Starfelt. In the January, we brought in another 10 for Abada. And you're thinking business. You've got a model there. But in the background, you're absolutely hosing 20 million pound down the drain. And we should never be in that position again, because there has to be a system in place, JP, regardless of who the manager is, that still works. There's a player who plays this style, and here's the attributes that obviously will allow him to play our style of football. The only question will be all that stuff that's very, very difficult to gauge in terms of attitude, mentality, personality, and all that stuff.
Because, by the way, a different manager comes in. His name's not Brendan Rodgers in that summer, and that's the cards he's been dealt in terms of that transfer window. That could have lost us a league title.
Absolutely.
That 100% we got away with it because we had a really good manager, and because there was enough about the people that were still there that got us through, and probably they had to work a little bit harder, or a lot harder than they would have needed to. Because sometimes I've heard managers say this team's done so well for me, but they need some help. They really need some help because there's a lot of heavy lifting going on here, and this is a lot to ask of players to play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, the intensity of it. So in order to mix it up a bit, that transfer window didn't really help Brendan Rodgers, did it?
No.
It didn't help that squad, really. It didn't. It wasn't like you were immediately bringing all these guys in who could be relied upon. There were maybe some would say there were project signings or whatever, but project signings are fine and well if you've got enough about your first team and enough squad players in your first team that are ready to rock in terms of what they've been presented with. But I don't think any of those guys really could have been considered, immediate kind of starters or anything like that. I mean, because they didn't, they flattered to deceive, and Brendan Rodgers clearly didn't rate them to the point that's why they're out on loan. That's why they've been out on loan, and that's why they've been nowhere near the first team or surplus to requirements. So, we massively got away with one on that, and we've seen before how easily it can spiral if it was a new managerial appointment who didn't know the club, who hadn't been in that pressurised role at the club and then all of a sudden he's got this squad to deal with, you know?
Totally. You're not overstating that at all there, JP. And I remember, again, I don't watch it religiously, but the overlaps, decent chat. Obviously, Keno and Wright are my two favourites on it. But I do remember, because Gary Neville runs a team. Who is it? Salford. Salford FC. He runs a team, and he spoke about how a bad signing, it takes 4 or 5 windows to get over a bad signing. Well, we're 4 windows in now, aren't we, of that bad window? So absolutely, there's an impact there. There's an impact on the youth development of players that are being blocked of first team opportunities, because if you spent 20 million quid, you're going to have to try these guys out and see if they're capable. Before I dive into the comment section, I got a message on the Instagram page, I think it was actually, and it was in relation to a Hugh Doherty, who was the only Buncrana native to play for Celtic. I've been told, I'm not from the area, so please forgive me with my pronunciation, that he was the only Inishowen, is that the way you pronounce it? I hope it is, man, to play for the football club. And today, on today, it might be happening as we speak, the council are erecting a plaque outside his family home. And I was told by Jen and Eamon, who now live in the house, that this is happening. They let us know the unveiling is happening today. Eamon's an Acsom listener. Big shout out to you if you're listening live, or indeed if you come back to it. And obviously, having been told this information, you check out the player. When he passed away in 2014 at the age of 93, JP, he was the oldest living Celtic player at the time of his passing. Unbelievable, 93. He also played for Blackpool alongside Stanley Matthews. And yes, he goes back to County Donegal as well. Absolutely love hearing that kind of stuff. So anybody who's involved in it or related to the late Hugh Doherty, I hope you have a great day. And it's fitting that the plaque is going to go up outside the family home. Absolutely love all that stuff. You're into your history as well, JP. That's tremendous to hear all that stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I'm sure it'll get fairly well visited. I hope they don't mind people climbing their fence to go and get a picture taken with it, because that's inevitably going to happen.
I was thinking about this, JP. Again, it's another kind of Celtic thing, but I was thinking about, all the different places that you could visit in relation to Celtic statues, plaques. We've got Brother Walfred, we've got various different statues like Bobby Lennox and Silcoats, we've got Billy McNeil and Bells Hill. Again, going back to your pal, the modern day historian. I know he does tours, Matthew Marr, doesn't he? He does tours and stuff like that. But there's tours of Ireland and Scotland where all these different landmarks are that you could actually go and visit and take a walk down memory lane in terms of Celtic history, which, again, I'm pretty sure you could do it with most clubs. But I love the fact that Celtic have got that and we're steeped in history. And it got me to thinking of all the different groups who are set up as well in relation to various aspects of Celtic. And I would like to have a list of them all, actually, just for various things going forward, because there was a coming together last year or the year before, and I was asked for a mailing list for all the kind of Celtic media guys. And when I started listing it, JP, I couldn't believe how many blogs and podcasts and various different sites there were dedicated to Celtic. So here we go. I'm going to say this out loud, and hopefully if there's any others, you can let me know. I think this is the list, right? Obviously, we've got the North America and the Irish associations, the fan groups. We've also got the Kano Foundation, the Green Brigade, Boys, the affiliation, the association, Celtic Grave Society, Former Players Association, the Celtic Trust, the Tommy Gemmell Community Project, John Fallon's 12th Man, the Bertie Auld Legacy, the Jimmy Johnson Charitable Trust, Billy McNeil Against Dementia, not to mention the various other committees that were set up to build statues like the Bobby Lennox statue, the Billy McNeil statue. And I'm not sure if they're still active, but we had the John Thompson Memorial Committee up in Cardenden as well. JP, that's like over 15 different groups, all dedicated to one aspect of Celtic Football Club, all doing it voluntarily. I find it absolutely incredible.
I mean, it should surprise you, but at the same time, it doesn't surprise me because of just how passionate people are about supporting Celtic. And it can be small things like seeing a Celtic strip when you're on holiday and you end up becoming pals with somebody, and then you end up like maybe even friends for life. I think it's pretty amazing actually what the club does in terms of bringing people together and doing good. Like doing good to represent the club, whether it's a small endeavour or something like massive that people undertake. Once you get the kind of power of the Celtic support behind it, and it's something that people recognise as being for good, then in general people will kind of get behind it in numbers. And you've seen so many examples of that over, well, certainly throughout my lifetime, in terms of changes that have been made and voices heard, things like that. Whether it's something actually tangible changing, and erecting a statue that's going to be permanent, or something that's just a protest, or so many things. But it's good to be one of the good guys.
It is. It's just everybody. I would say it's a wee bit fragmented. Everybody's so focused on doing their own bit and their own thing, obviously, and they're so busy doing it. I don't think there is a coming together, even annually, whereby there's certain things that they could assist each other on, particularly with the statues. You need to speak to people that have gone through that process before. So yes, big shout out to every single one of you guys that put in loads of hours. Unimaginable the work you put in. I'm going to bring in some of these comments. There's some favourite movies coming in as well. JP, Barry O'Sullivan, Afternoon Troops. Hope everyone is well. Hope you're well as well, Barry. Nice and positive. I like to see that. Jay Conley, Jay Larkin. Afternoon all. Lovely wee spell of weather doing here in Northumberland. Well, I hope you're getting time to enjoy that. I hear that the weather in Belfast is going to be nice tomorrow. So hopefully I can get a wee bit of time to chill out in that as well before the big one with Paddy Lavery. Barry, you're back in. Got my Panathinaikos membership yesterday. That top. Before we came on, JP, I said to you, the home and away Panathinaikos top, probably, we could probably get away with wearing them at Celtic Park every single year.
Well, yeah, I was in Athens 10 years ago. It's the only time I've really spent any time in the city. I mean, Michael Taggart, who's been on the show, booked us a flight home via Athens from Munich when we were there for the last Champions League game, not the one that's just passed, the one in, would have been 2017, I think. And I remember him saying to me, I were flying home via Athens. And I was like, why? And he went, well, it was either that or sitting Heathrow for a whole day. And I was like, well, I must get an afternoon in Athens. So we actually left the airport and went into town and went up the necropolis and everything else. And so that was the second time I'd been. But the first time I was there, I spent a bit of time and obviously got a chance to roam around sports shops, things like that. And I found a cool wee back alley sports shop that reminded me of my hometown sports shop in Bathgate, Sportique. It was kind of similar. It was that kind of, there was just everything in it, ice skating boots and just like all sorts of mad stuff. But they had like a couple of racks of football tops, and I think that at the time was like the previous season's Panathinaikos top, and I just pulled it out and I was like, there is no way I am not leaving here with that top. It's absolutely amazing. So I've had it for 10 years.
I love it.
Go out and buy a Panathinaikos top just to put up behind me today. I mean, I don't think I could have had time to do that. So yeah, it's
many have, I'm sure. What I used to love, not that long ago, around about the time we Berham Kayal, it was Nike that did it, and it was a leisure range, and they took the 4-leaf clover and they made it that size, JP, that's on your jersey there, and it looked great on the polos. And then Adidas have done it for a few of the away jerseys, and it does look good. It's just bold, isn't it? And yesterday, someone was talking to me on the socials about the old school jersey. I think I've got an image of it here. I might not actually. The old school jersey, the Shamrock jersey for the 1960s. With a big green collar and the green sleeves, white with a big, shamrock on it. I'll tell you what, that's an open goal for any kit manufacturer. Just recreate that. That will sell by the bucket load. Why don't we do it? It seems so obvious to do that. Even if it was one of the commemorative ones, get it done. A massive talking point before I get back to the comments about the arrival or the impending arrival of Balikwisha is, are we now looking at Maida as a centre forward? Obviously, he'll need to cover between now and Jota coming back, but we've seen Jota on the grass, so that might be a wee bit sooner than we expected. I think it's a good discussion point. Let us know in the comment section, is a centre forward less of a priority because of all that as well? These moving parts.
We're signing one from Fulham. This Fulham signing is making little sense to me. Like, why are you bringing in a guy at that age? One of the articles mentioned the lure of first team football. Like, this guy's not going to play first team football for Celtic like that.
It's an interesting discussion, that.
Kenny, Adam Ida, we're surely in the market for another striker because Brendan Rodgers has said that he wants one. So,
see the thing, right? I was looking at this Osman. There was a comment yesterday. John Hughes had spoken about Callum Osman. I look at it and think, all right, okay, he's been identified as a young talent, 19-year-old Fulham, underaged player, he's never played a game of senior football in his career. And he's the same age that Moussa Dembele was when we signed him from Fulham. That's where the comparison stops. Moussa Dembele, when he came to Celtic at 19, striker, plays for Fulham. That's it. When we signed him, Spurs had put in a £5 million bid in January, JP, for Moussa Dembele. It was knocked back because Fulham wanted Spurs to loan him right back to Fulham because they were fighting relegation at the time. Spurs didn't want to do that, so it was knocked back. By the time Celtic signed him, he'd entered the last 6 months of his contract, which meant that he would get one of these development fees. But there was a cross-border rule that meant Celtic could pick him up for 500 grand. By the time we signed Dembele, he'd played in the Premier League in England. He'd played 60-odd games for Fulham's first team, scoring goals. So I can't see the comparison. I look at him and I think to myself, right, we had a young player in the squad last season, Daniel Cummings, who sat on the bench for a few games, and he was introduced against Aston Villa, as we all know, but he's away to West Ham. I think he's a replacement for him in the squad, in the wider squad, rather than even a replacement for or to fight for a jersey with Johnny Kenny. I see it at the moment. Maida, for me, is the number one striker, and bringing in Balikwisha would strengthen that thought process. Followed by Ida, then you've got Johnny Kenny and young Osman fighting for the jersey. And Kenny might get loaned out as well. But I see him more of a replacement for Cummings. He's a young guy. Is this the David Pleat English scouting coming to fruition?
Well, I mean, let's think about it. What would you expect Osman to have done at Celtic in 2 years' time? So we're sitting here in it's quite mad to think about it, June 2027. What would you expect him to have done by then in terms of appearances? I mean, all I can see with this is he'll end up on several loans probably, and it'll be, you know, how he develops out on loan. I can't see him being at Celtic next season. If he's come here wanting to play football, it doesn't really seem like there's a very clear path for him to do that, especially when we're letting a guy go like Daniel Cummings, who got, how many minutes against Aston Villa? And that was it. You know, it's there's not really... I'm quite surprised that he's chosen us to come to be honest. If there was a list of people in for him, which you would expect there to be, there's no way that it was only Celtic that were in for him in that signing. But I'm surprised that he's chosen us to come to. I hope he's not watching this and thinking, what have I let myself in for? I didn't realise it was going to be like this. I'm pretty sure he's not. But you know what I mean? It's just like, what is the pathway for him? Obviously, I hope he comes in and obviously maybe gets a loan move, does really well in the loan move and comes back and then maybe gets a chance. But just right now, with the way things are with young players, especially strikers, it just doesn't seem like there's a youth player ready to like step up and take on that mantle. I mean, unless we're going to lose somebody, and I hope that's not the case, but I just don't see where his development goes from here.
It's a classic project signing. And I don't mind saying it, JP, because I think it's important to also have that type of player on the books. Not every player is going to walk right into the first team. We've brought him in, and I don't think he's a first team player at the moment. I really don't. He's never kicked a ball at senior level. And so to yesterday, we were getting these comparisons with Dembele. Night and day, absolute night and day in terms of where they are. You know, they're the same age, but Dembele was a seasoned player by this point. He'd been playing for 2 years, 3 years almost, because he turned 20 as soon as he signed for us. He was wanted by Arsenal when we signed him. Mr. Dembele. So I'm not seeing the comparison.
I think it seems so strange that like there's a guy literally going down the road to the same city that he's leaving from, pretty much a similar age profile, give or take a year. I mean, I don't know how long Daniel Cummings has got till he's 19, but it just seems a bit weird that we've got this seemingly highly rated striker in our own door, and then it's like, oh no, we'll let that guy go down there, and then we'll get an English guy to come up, pretty much the same age, and take his place. It seems bizarre.
It's unusual. And I mean, Cummings had been at Celtic for 12 years. That's another thing, right? So there needs to be, for me, there needs to be an end game there for Celtic. What was the end game?
From the little I've heard through like a friend who knows his family, like massive Celtic fan, head screwed on, not a Louis Vuitton wash bag type of guy. You know, he's he's not apparently not that type of guy. So you're kind of scratching your head going, well, why would you let a Scottish Celtic youth player who's got a pretty good strike rate and admittedly a lower league scenario, but I don't know. I'm a bit baffled by it.
Me as well. And by the way, it's not being negative, JP. Absolutely not. I hope Osman comes in and has a great career.
I'm not down on the guy signing. I'm just
not at all
questioning like the process and what's led us to him.
Yeah, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I mean, whatever his wages at Fulham, I can guarantee you it's more than what Cummins was making at Celtic. So he's not coming to Celtic and taking a drop in wages at this age. Osman, I'm talking about. So prior to the 1st of January, why not offer Cummings that deal? Because we knew what Cummins was about. And before anybody says, yeah, Rodgers didn't rate him, Rodgers did rate him because Rodgers played him in the Champions League and offered him a deal. He was offered a deal at the end of January, by which time he'd already spoken to West Ham. I just don't understand the process there, but it may or may not become clear. What does it do for Johnny Kenny? Is Johnny Kenny still got a future at Celtic? We shall wait and see. Tony Cunningham, you're in. Been tracking this boy Balikwisha for a while now. Get it done. Definitely looks like he'd do a job for us. And we've also got Jay Conley, Jay Larkin. I was excited by possibility of signing him last summer. It seems to have been dragged on for a while. Barry O'Sullivan, Balikwisha looks like a baller. Get him in. We've also got James Kirwan. Tierney, Nygren, Balikwisha. Great to see the window is not steamed up this season. We can clearly see that Celtic are pushing the rebuild. The players that come on need to hit the ground running. Yeah, they do. They do, because we've got a qualifier. And I don't know when you're going to start counting down to that, JP, like we did for Midtjylland, but we've got a qualifier coming up as well. Jungle Lion, as if there wasn't enough pressure on Paddy Lavery tomorrow night. He's just, turned the dial up a wee bit. Paddy, there's no pressure on you whatsoever, mate. You enjoy the night. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be leaving early doors tomorrow morning, and I'll get through as soon as I possibly can to see you as well. Paddy comes back. Pressure is my middle name, Jungle. That's why I live in the Doyne. There we go. And we've got a few. There's someone coming to the gig. Patrick Fitzpatrick. Looking forward to Chris Sutton and Acsom in Belfast tomorrow evening. That makes two of us. And Frank Cleary, I was going to ask you this, JP, because I've seen the picture on your socials. Hope that you enjoyed your tour of Celtic Park. Hail, hail. The last time I was there, so you could do the sums, you could do the maths, I chose to sit underneath Key's jersey. Key Sung Young.
Right.
That's his jersey, right? So you sat underneath James Forrest, right? Why?
I didn't sit down and say, take a picture of me. I just sat down. And I didn't really clock who I was sitting down at, and then I think I just looked behind me to see whose jersey it was, and that's when my mate Chris took the picture. But yeah, there was a lot of interest in Jota's jersey from the kids that were on the tour. They were all fighting over each other to get a picture in front of him, and it was weird being back in the dressing room actually, because the last time I was in there was 2011 when I played the game. At Celtic, the Football Aid game, so it was still as it was. But they did say, I forget whose locker it was currently, but when Henrik Larsson's locker is still the same. Like if ever he comes back to play in like a charity game or a testimonial or something like that, he gets his locker back.
They've retired his locker. I love it.
No, it's been used by somebody just now, but should he come back, it gets changed over for him. I mean, of course it does.
No bother, Henrik.
Have you seen that painting that's been commissioned? The Lisbon painting that as you come out of the trophy room. Do you know about that?
Has it got various different things like tickets and all that on it as well? And tenants, I have seen it.
And it's got the medal, but it's sort of sticking out of the painting. It's like an actual block, like looks like a block of gold of the medal sticking out. It's amazing, and it's been signed by several members of the team. But it's unbelievable piece of work.
Stunning bit of work. I remember when it was unveiled like a few years ago.
Yeah.
Spielberg's best ever movie, says Paddy Lavery. Obviously, we opened up talking about Jaws. I'm still marveling at that gin behind you. I don't drink gin. I just thought it looks great. We've also got Lackwinder Pal, one of my favourite films, Godfather, the first one. Look. There you go. Just to hand, we could have an entire hour talking about which one was best. Has to be The Godfather 2, says Jay Conley Larkin.
Godfather 2.
Or Casablanca. Chinatown, I only saw that in the last few months, actually, Alan. It took me quite a few years to get around to watching it. Zulu is the greatest film ever, says Barry Quinn. Favourite movie is Angels with Dirty Faces, James Cagney, says James Devine. Once Upon a Time in the West, oh yeah, absolutely love that film as well. But I'm looking because there was one here. Yes, we've got a Celtic one coming up just after Fargo, Danny, as well as the movie. Go and watch the series as well, absolutely brilliant. And we've also got Jogve, not a film, but the BBC special on the Celtic 67th anniversary. It's the best hour of produced TV. I love it. Watch it all the time. Is this the one, Jogve, that was released on the 50th anniversary? And Bertie Auld goes up to Panmure Street and everything. I interviewed her about that. Actually, just after that, because it won a BAFTA, I interviewed the director of that particular documentary, a Celtic fan called John McClaverty. If you're watching, John, I hope you're well. And yes, go check it out because I interviewed him and Phil Differ on the same show. It's on the YouTube channel and we talk all about it. And Phil gets very emotional talking about the Lions and unbelievable. I agree with you. It's up there. It's probably the best documentary on Celtic that I've ever seen, JP, that particular one. It's amazing.
I know. I remember being told to watch it at the time, and then I think it was maybe 3 or 4 days after it had been released, I got around to watching it, and I was like, "All right, I get why everybody's talking about this because it was properly amazing."
Oh, I like they take Bobby Lennox down to the beach at Salt Coats, and he's sitting having a cup of tea with his wife and all that, and they've just done it differently, haven't they? They've done it completely differently, and Bertie going up to his old flat up in it's Panmure Street, I think it was, that he lived in, and going in and telling his stories, and then he starts getting emotional as well, Bertie Auld, and it's absolutely.
Speaking of him, you know what they've got in a glass case as you walk in to the right hand side. So the right hand side of that painting, there's a glass case, and I forget what it might be, a strip of some sort, but his Adidas leather kit bag that he took to Lisbon is in a glass case. And they reckon it's the only one that's still intact and around. Like they don't know maybe other players have still got them in their families or whatever. But that bag was the only one. It was a white kit bag with Adidas on it, and obviously I told the story about the Adidas boots and how they all got the Adidas boots delivered before the final, and none of the players wanted to wear the Adidas boots because they were superstitious. And it, obviously, brand new boots for a final, probably not a great idea. So they all, was it Neely Mockin put the white stripes. So from a distance, Adidas had no idea that they weren't playing in their boots. They were actually playing in their own.
I absolutely love that story, JP. And the first time I ever became aware of it, it was in a book called One Afternoon in Lisbon by... who wrote it? Kevin McCara, the dearly departed Kevin McCara, and he wrote it with Pat Woods. And I remember reading it. It was Jim Craig that told the story about, some of them had like what they called baffies. They had boots that were familiar to them. Their feet really felt good in them, and they didn't want to wear these brand spanking new boots right out the box fresh football boots, because you might get blisters and all that kind of stuff. So nearly the night before the game. And apparently it was so I remember hearing that thinking, this is fantastic. Every time I seen a picture, I tried to find the boots, and I have found it, and just yesterday somebody was talking about it, and I brought it up. The best image of Billy McNeil's boots right now. This is the captain.
He's shaking
of,
hands.
He's shaking hands, but I've zoomed in. And let me just delete this one, right, and then I'll bring this up because it just shows you a different side to that European Cup win. In that, we did do it playing beautiful, attractive, entertaining football, but we also did it wearing Puma boots with 3 stripes. Now, I'm going to actually remove that wee ticker tape for the bottom just to get the full glimpse. I'm sure everybody knows the story, but nearly mocking painted day 3 stripes on a pair of Puma boots. You can actually see the Puma swoosh has been polished over.
Aye.
And he's wearing white socks. It's a European white laces. It's a European Cup fight. I love that side of it. It's so innocent.
Did you
really
know?
Is.
You all know this, of course you will. But did you know that the pendant that he's handing over to the Inter Milan captain, the Celtic pendant, they got it back. It was up for auction, and it's now in the trophy room. Good. So it's in the glass cabinet behind Stevie Chalmers' match-worn shirt from the game, and an Inter Milan defender. I think it's number 5. His shirt's in there as well, but the pendant is massive.
Yeah,
and a director at Celtic paid 23 grand for it in an auction, and then gave it to the club.
That's good that it's back. Look at that. Billy McNeil's not even wearing any shin guards. Unbelievable. I love all that stuff. Listen, we've been talking everything from Jaws to putting Tipp-Ex on Puma boots. That's what happens on a Thursday afternoon, and it's always a pleasure to be joined by John Paul Mason. If you want to get involved with anything that we're doing, everything's on the website and all the links are underneath the video. There's about 20 tickets left for Brian McClare and Peter Grant next Friday. And if you're coming out to see us in Belfast tomorrow night, come and say hello. I'm really looking forward to that. But if not, join us anyway at 12:30 tomorrow on A Celtic State of Mind.